Hello and welcome. So today we are going to draw and paint the iris that's in the front of the screen that you can see there, or the top left of my screen rather. So I'm going to start by drawing just the basic outline, and these are quite beautiful shapes, these petals. They all curl around each other. They're really quite lovely. Just got to be careful. They wrap around. So there's two on the outsides, come out and down. It's really fun to try and look at these shapes. I'm going to change that one a little bit. So I'm just going to erase that with my kneadable eraser, like that. And then that shape comes up this side. And I'm going to take it almost to the top of the page, wrapping around, just looking at the shapes, forgetting everything else, just looking at the shapes, because that helps. Because sometimes if you try and look at it for what it is, you can get confused and think too much into it when it is just shapes. Just got to focus on the shapes. Okay, so I'm a bit happier with that one. Now I can just see there's a petal at the back. Beautiful soft looking petals they are too. I'm going to make this hanging petal a bit longer, like that. Come up and that curves around, and I'm going to change the angle of this petal just a little bit, like that. Okie doke. And then that one needs to look a little bit more curved than I've got it, so I'm just going to shape that there. They've got beautiful, beautiful stripes on them too. I'm going to make this petal a bit bigger. You can adjust and readjust, it's all good. I can see the one over here actually, there's another one over there. Then I come down here, so I'm just blocking in the shapes. There's a sort of a shaped part of the stem that the flower sort of comes out of, and then the stem goes down like that. You can hear my little dog in the background, I apologise. Okay, I am going to erase the middle because I've adjusted the size on that petal, so I've got to erase a bit of that. Get that off there, like that. And then in the centre there are little stripes that I'm just going to suggest these stripes going into the centre, like that. And they sort of come down in a shape. I can take them a bit longer than I had them then, like that. Take them down like that. And this one, I can see them coming around here. And it doesn't have to be exact, I'm just suggesting them, like that. And I'll leave little dots so that I know to leave these little spots for the lighter, that I need to leave lighter marks, so it's going to be sort of yellowish in the middle there. Okay, so I'm quite happy with the shape. I've got to sort of soften up the edge. Excuse my dog. He's barking at the washing machine. Okay, come down and around here. Alright. Okay, I'm going to leave that, and I'm going to wet my watercolours, and because there's lovely shades of purple and mauve in these. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to do the mauve petals up the top. So I'm going to grab my cloth and I'm going to wet the paper. I'm going to make sure my brush is nice and clean, and I'm going in with quite a large size 14. I don't need a size 14 brush. I need a middle size one. I reckon I'll go a size 6. So I'm going to wet my paper. Whoops. Make sure my brush is clean, and then I'm just going to wet everywhere. I'm going to add this beautiful mauve tone. So I come through here, wet all of that, take it down close to the bottom of the petal, and I'm going to go in with this lovely light mauvey colour, and I'm just going to drop that in onto the paper and let it flow. And I'll try and keep that nice soft light effect. And I'm just going to let that flow down. I'm going to clean my brush. I'll drop in. I've got to stay away from the bottom because I'm going to add some yellows to that in a little while. So now I'm going to wet the next petal and take that down. I can actually do it. I can actually take it along the other petal as well. You can see I've still got a little bit of pigment. I've always got a bit of cloth in my pan. I've still got a little bit of pigment on the brush, just a teeniest little bit. So it is tinted water almost. So now I'm going to drop some more pigment in and let it flow down. And you can get some beautiful soft effects. Beautiful soft effects with wet in wet technique, it's called. Just going to take that down, pick up that puddle at the bottom. It's called the bead. I'll pick that bead up. I'm just going to take it closer, paint closer into the edge of the petals, and I'm just starting to block in those top ones. Now I'm going to start to block in these lower ones, and they're a stronger tone. So I am going to go in with, I need a bit more of a pinky purple. That's a better colour. You see that on the right hand side of my screen. I've just mixed two purples together to make the purple that I want. And I'm going to clean my brush, and I'm going to wet these bottom petals. Clean my brush and wet the bottom petals, staying off the stripes that I've painted on. Doesn't matter that the water's tinted a little bit. Purple's a very strong colour in watercolour, and I didn't clean my brush thoroughly, but it doesn't matter because this is a colour that I'm going to be using. And I'm just going to drop that stronger purple in and let it flow like that. Drop that in and let it flow. And I'm using Arches watercolour paper. It's my favourite. Right, now I'm just going to see that little bit at the end. I'm just going to brush that down and make it a bit softer looking. And I am going to come onto this side of my page and wet this side, this petal. There's going to be a few different layers of these mauves and purples. So I come down here, wet all that, and then I go back into my purpley tone that I've got on my paper, and I drop that in and I let it flow. I could probably do with a little bit more on my brush. So take that down and around, get a little bit more on there. And because I've wet the page, the paint will flow where the water has been put. There we go, like that. Let's take that round the edge. And I'm actually going to add a little bit. I can see a little bit of that darker mauve on that petal there too. Right, okie doke. Now, this bottom part is a yellowy green, so I'm going to leave that till after. I'm going to absorb up, clean my brush, take the excess moisture out, pick up that little puddle at the bottom where the water beads at the bottom. And I'm going to go back onto these top petals with my, I don't know, I'm going to call it lilac. It's a lilac colour. And I am going to start, while that's still damp, I'm going to darken up this side, because you can see that one's in shade. Looks quite shaded anyway. And I'm going to take my brush strokes in the directions that I can see the petal going. I've got to add a darker strip down the middle, but I'll do that in a little bit. I'm going to come onto this other these other two petals, and I'm going to, while it's still damp, and drop some more of that pigment in. Let it flow down like that. Take it around this edge. Let it flow down. Okie doke. Now, this stronger purple, I'm going to get a bit more of a, I'm going to add a bit of red to that purple, just to brighten it up a little bit, because it needs to be a bit more reddy, I think, a bit more of a reddy purple. That's a bit better. That's a bit better, I think. And I'm going to go back over and drop that in to anywhere that I see. Whoops, that would be my washing machine and my dog barking at the washing machine. Sorry about that. And I'm going to take that down and around. And this is a fun one to try, because it's lots of just effects, wet and wet sort of effects. Then I'm going to come down to the bottom of this one and take, whoops, it needs to, it's a little bit dry now, that bit of paper, so I'm just going to wet the paper again, just a little bit. And I'm going to take that around the bottom, like that. Okie doke. I've got to let that dry a fraction. I'm just going to soften that edge. So what I do to soften it is I clean my brush, take the extra moisture off it with my cloth that I've got in my hand, and I just touch the edges just to make them a little bit softer looking. Right, while I'm letting that dry, I'm going to go onto the stem. And for the first layer on the stem, I'm going to add a bit of yellow. Whoops, got a bit of red in there, but that doesn't matter. I might clean that off and get another fresh bit of yellow, because I had a bit of red on my brush. So grab a bit of yellow, that's like that, and I'm going to wet the stem part. Doesn't matter, I'm not going to go up to the purple because I don't want it to bleed into that. And then I take that down like that, and I'm going to drop some more yellow in and let that flow down like that. So I let that flow, and I'm going to add a little bit of green. So I'm going to go a little bit of sap green. I'm going to add that into my yellow. Little bit of sap, like that. And I'm going to drop that into the yellow and let it blend. Let it blend. Excuse my dog in the background. I am so sorry. She just, every time I stream or every time I do art videos, she wants to be in the middle of it all and she wants to beg for food. Okay. Hey David, how are you, doll? How are you? Thank you for popping in. So now I'm also going to add a little bit of that lilac-y colour, because you can see, and a bit of the purple as well, into the green while it's still wet, and let it flow, because you can see there's quite a strong colour on the base of the bit that holds the plant. So I drop that in like that. Okay, I think that's dry enough up the top. I'm going to add a bit of a stronger yellow now into the, you can see into this part of the flower, the petals, it's got the orangey yellowy colour. I'm going to go in with a strong, I've got two different palettes here. I'm going to go a bit of orange off this other palette, I think, because it's a proper orange, proper nice strong orange that I'm going to need. So off my Schminky palette, I'm going to go a bit of orange, which you can't really see there. I'll pop it up. I'll clean this little bay out and I'll pop my orange in there so you can see it. There we go, that's better. Now you can see the orange that I'm using. And it is Cadmium Orange Deep. I'm going to wet that down, wet my brush, and I'm going to very carefully take that orange and put it in stripes coming down this part of the stem, and also I'm going to dilute the yellow and pop it down into this part. I can go over the yellow with the orange also, which I will do. So take that down here like that, and then also I'm going to take it around the edge like that and onto that petal. And you can see it's starting to come together. And bring that around the outside. Well, that's still a little bit damp. I can drop that in. It won't hurt it. There we go. And I'm starting, you can see the watercolour blends itself. It does wonderful, wonderful magical effects. That's what I love about watercolour. It really does some beautiful things. Now, I've also got to leave a little bit of the white of the paper because the petals do have white on them. So I've got to be a bit careful not to fill in the whole thing. So there are petals in here too, and they're more yellowy. And I might fill that in. I'm actually going to add a little bit of that. I'm going to come into here like that and fill in this bit, just with a little light wash. I'm just looking at the shapes to try and keep. I've got to let that dry now, and I can start to add the actual lines and details and the fun little fussy bits that I love doing, all the little fine bits. So that's basically wet in wet. All of that is pretty much wet in wet. And I'm going to go back into my lilac colour. I'm going to clean that tray off so you can see that. Back into my lilac, and I'm going to go less water, more paint. So that way you will see that I can get more of the detail. So I can see little veins. The petals have got little veins on them. So I'm just going to come around the edge, and the edge of the petal is quite strong. So come back around here like that. I need a finer tip than the one I'm using. So I'm going to find in here. I have a super fine tip brush. Where is it? I've got to find it. I know I have one in here somewhere. There we go. That one will do. A little fine tip brush so that I can get just a thinner line in the veins that I want. That's better. I can use just a couple of hairs on the end of that brush to take those veiny effects where I want them. And the same up the top here. I'm going to go around that edge with the stronger pigment. So it's exactly the same colour, just more pigment, less water. And I'm just going to brush that in there like that. Start to try and get some of the sort of three-dimensional effect. So you can see that's in shadow. And then also I'm going to take that around. I'm just trying to look at where these little veins go. They come back in this way and around like that. And it's not, I'm trying just to look at the individual little shapes, because otherwise you sort of try and do too much and it can be confusing. So I just sort of break it into little segments and see one little bit at a time. So I'm just looking at the veins on this part. I might go in with a stronger purple off that. There we go, that's better. Because some of these little veins are quite strong. And take those back in that way. And you can just see there's another little shadow coming down here. Just looking at the shapes. Just looking at the shapes of the shadows. Nice and easy. And that'll help to bring that to life. Okay, so I'm going to leave that one alone for a minute. Go back into my lilac, less water, more paint. And I'm going to add around the edge. I'm going to go around the edge here. And I've got to add the liney bits, the veins of the petal into that petal underneath there. A little bit at the top. And I got this picture off Unsplash, which is a royalty-free reference site. Okay, now this petal, I'm going to go back into that lilac colour, and I'm going to start to add, I'm going to add the vein down the middle, so less water, more pigment. So I'm going to take that right round there, because that gives you the shape of that petal. And then I'm just going to draw these little veins with the tip, the very tip of my brush, all the way around, and they'll fade back, they'll dry slightly lighter, and just always following the shape of the petal, and that will help make it not look so flat. The trick is with flowers is to just follow the shapes of the leaves and the petals. I'm actually going to add a little bit of a stronger, I'm going to water that, add some more water to that, and just strengthen that just down here. Just drop that in, re-wet that paper just there. I want that to be a little bit stronger. And I also want this one in behind to be a little bit stronger. So I'm just going to re-wet that. I just realised I need to go darker. When you think you've gone dark enough, go darker! As one of my arty friends always says, when you think you've got enough shadow, go more. Okay, so it's starting to come together. Okay, this bottom, I'm going to let that dry for a little bit, and then I'll go back onto the veins. Or I can do the veins up the top here, actually. I can do these ones. So again, go into with the tip of my brush into the paint. It's more paint, less, more paint, less water. And then it's actually turned up a bit at the edge, so I'll turn that up. Again, it's following the shape. And they're sort of frayed edges. They're soft, frayed, delicate edges. Okay, I'm having a look at the big screen. It's looking okay. I'm quite happy with that. Okay, now purple. I'm going to go back into my purples, and I am going to just add a little bit more water, and I'm going to take this purple around this bottom part of this leaf or petal. See, that's a much stronger, I've got to wet that a bit more actually. I want it to flow. So I'm just going to wet that with that same, just a very diluted pigment onto that. So I've made it darker purple, but it doesn't matter because I don't have that exact tone. So you sort of got to make it up as you go sometimes. Okay, come around this half. Take it around here. Whoops a day, excuse my dogs again. They're both being very loud this morning. Okay, you can see I'm starting to get a bit of the shape happening. And I'm going to drag some of that down to the edges. Bear. Little Terralera. Okay, take that around the edges like that. Okie doke. Just looking at the shapes. So you can see a circle shape there, and there's sort of a hint of a shape, like I don't know what shape you'd call that. We'll call it a bent shape. And then we're going to come down onto this petal, and I'm going to add some of these darker lines now. Coming down here. And they sort of go into little dots coming down onto this yellow. And they go, you can see where I'd made little pencil marks. So I'm just going to fill those in now, like that. And I'm going to fill these little stripes in up here with this stronger purple. like that. Excuse my dogs. They've decided they need to be vocal now. And I'm going to come around the edge, just a little bit around the edge of this petal. And I've just seen that I've missed a little bit of orange down here, but I can add orange over the top. And I'm just going to get this shape back into this edge, like that. And I can go around the bottom of that one with a stronger pigment. I'm just going to shut this door. I'm going to let the dog out. Come on, Bear. Go on, out you go. Come on. No, you don't want to go out now. Little terror. He wanted to go out, now he doesn't want to go out. Okay, we'll just leave him in. And I'm going to go around the edge of that petal. And I've got to add lines, delicate lines, back into here. Also leaving white of the paper in spots, because they're just the most beautiful patterns on these flowers. Oh, excuse my dog. Little terror. Hey, Bear Bear. Goodness gracious. Alright, so come around here. And it's going to add some of that stronger tone. There we go. It's starting to look like the iris, which is what we want. And I'm going to go back in with this strong orange, so a lot more orange and a lot less water. And I'm going to start to strengthen up anywhere I can see pattern in that bright orange. So I come into that middle of that petal there, come around here, having a quick look. There is mauve in there, which I will also add back in, and there's quite strong orange coming around the top of this petal that's on a downward tilt. There we go. And also there's quite strong orange coming into here, like that. I'll take that down onto there. And there's also, it comes down into this central part of the flower. Take it down into there. And under, I've got to add some of this orange. I think this orange will be strong enough that I can pop it back over the, see how I've lost the orange in that bottom part of the petal, but I can add it back because this is actually quite a strong pigment, so which is great. So it means that I can actually go over the dark tone. I'm going to now wet my brush, blend that out a bit, take that back and around like that, and I'm going to add more of this strong purple onto the base of the flower. Again, excuse my dogs. They're being very loud today. Take that down onto the stem, I mean, and I'm going to wet that like that and drag it down so it'll blend in a little bit. Rightio, I'm having a quick look. I've got to strengthen up. I'm going to add another layer of that mauvey colour. I've just got to open my little palette that was in, and I'm going to again add a little wash over the top. They call this glazing. So once your watercolour's dry, I can glaze a very fine layer over the top to help to just give it that slightly stronger tone, but without losing the light, the delicate lines that I've painted in underneath. Okay, having a quick look at the big screen. Okay, we're doing good. And this is where it can all go horribly wrong. You can overdo it. So I've got to be careful not to overdo it, but not to underdo it. It's a balancing act. It is very definitely a balancing act. I want to strengthen this purple here. So I'm just going to darken up while it's still damp, take that more pigment, less water onto that back petal. I can also go back in with a little bit of white gouache at the end if I feel like I need to. Okay, going to wet my brush and I'm going to glaze. I'm going to again go over, woo, a bit too much. I need a bit more water over the top. And you can see, still see my original brush marks. They're dry, so I'm not going to scrub hard and lose those. I don't want to lose the light brush mark. So yeah, this is called glazing, when you wait for it to dry and then you add another very light layer over the top. And I'm going to leave the background as well. I'm not going to do a background on this. I'm just going to leave it as it is, because I quite like the white against the purple of the flower. Okay, and I reckon that is not far from being done. I'm quite happy with that. Just as a simple, the effect, it gives the effect of the flower, which is what you want. It doesn't, it's not a photograph. It's an effect. It suggests. I might add a little bit of gouache. I've got a little bit of gouache here on my palette. I just might add a little bit of white, just to, got to get it onto my palette. I've got to might add just a little bit of white back in. Well, it's not really going to work, is it? Doesn't look like that's going to, a little bit of white. No, it's not going to lift. That's okay. I'll actually get my brush, clean it, and just, I can lift off by scrubbing. I can actually lift off a little bit of pigment. Use a clean bit of cloth. Got a clean bit of cloth here. And just touch the paper, and that'll lift a little bit of that paint just here. I just want to get a little bit lighter just in here. So literally just scrub it with my clean brush and then touch it with my paper. And it's paled it up a tiniest little bit, just the tiniest little bit. So that's fine, just a little bit. I just wanted to lighten that a fraction. There we go. Okay, I'm having another look at my screen. I'm quite happy, I think. I think I'm going to add a couple bit more lines along here. I might go into the stronger purple. Just let that flow down in there, like that. Just to connect those colours a bit more. And again in that one. Just closest to that bottom edge, like that. And I reckon I'm going to call that done. And I'm going to sign that down here. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. It was fun to do, and I'm still learning. Like, I'm very much learning with watercolours with flowers. I do a lot of animals, I don't do a lot of flowers. So this is learning for me too. So thank you for sharing my journey with me, and I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you next video. Have an awesome day.